half an hour, so we're going to start here. So feel free to chat if you want.
Yeah.
Get started, guys. That's okay. Get started. That's okay. So I think it's probably fair to say that not all of us here are at the same level. I know I'm not at the same level as Jim here, and he's devoted himself to hiking for 20 years, and I've just been a kind of a class clown here. And some of you out there are probably way above me too. So for many of you, please forgive me for my cheekiness here. And we don't have a lot of time, and so that's one problem. The second problem is I followed Jim in a program once, and he took 10 minutes of my time. So I'm trying to think of a solution to this problem, so I brought a chess clock. And when your flag falls, you're done, my friend. No, I'm just kidding, I didn't put a battery in it. So you can just push the button when my time is up.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So you want to make some opening comments here, Jim?
Any more? Me? I'm on?
You're on.
Thank you for coming. We do have a short amount of time, so we're going to keep our intros to the minimum. You know who we are. The topic that we've chosen evolved between the two of us over a series of email conversations. And we decided that much of what we might want to say on a first level might be obvious to you. The first thing is, what has haiku brought to you? I presume you already know that. You're here. You've published, not all of you have published in journals, some of you have books. You have a community, you have camaraderie, you have new friendship. So haiku has done stuff for you already. You already know that. And perhaps you're in the position where you're now saying, what else is there for me in haiku? And we'd like to twist that a little bit and say, what else can you do for haiku? What's the next step you're going to take? Personally, also in terms of how you might serve haiku, and also how you see haiku in a global vision. What's the large scale next step you might take? So next step is our theme. You all know Lee, and he undermines himself greatly for the wonderful work that he does. He's published many books, many awards. He's an exemplar English language haiku-er. I mean, you all know that. But you may not know that he's arrived at this point, but he also has a process that he follows rigorously as a poet. He performs every day for himself the task of being a writer. And it's very different from my practice. And that's interesting to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Lee, if he would, to describe how he is making himself move to the next level as a poet. And if you would, Lee.
Thanks, Jim. Oh, there we go. So our first subject is personal mastery. And at lunchtime, I was down at the bookstore and ran into Meryl Hazelton, and she said, who should I read about contemporary haiku? And it made me think about that a little bit, and the answer is you can't just read one person. And there's people that you should read, I think, if you want to achieve haiku mastery. One of them is R.H. Blythe, especially the first volume is a 4-volume series, because he teaches you that haiku is deep and that haiku is something to be loved. Even if you get nothing else out of those books, you'll get that. You should read Bill Higginson's Haiku Handbook. You should read Robert Spiessa's A Certain Open Secret About Haiku, which I believe is on the Modern Haiku website. You should read Hiro Shirane's Traces of Dreams, even though it's about Basho's haiku, and especially his essay Beyond the Haiku Moment, which has appeared in Modern Haiku in about 2000. I don't know if that's on the website or not. Charlie's not here and Paul's not here, so I can't ask them. And then you can't write contemporary haiku, I don't think, if you've not read Richard Gilbert's Disjunctive Dragonfly. You just can't do it.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry?
We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll speak louder.
Come close.
Okay, say close.
Come
You
close.
better come closer.
Come closer.
Yeah,
Come closer. I think that's what you said in your presentation. This is not church, okay? Although it is church, there's nobody in the front row. On the non-haiku side, I've read a lot of cognitive poetics. I think that's very important for us to read today because it's a contemporary exploration of how poetry affects the mind and how the mind affects poetry. And so it's hard for me to understand how you could write poetry today without thinking about that at least. And then I have three quotations that I try and keep in mind, which I'm going to read to you, and that's probably going to take the rest of my time here. I have a whole thing, so yeah. Do I have to change?
That's right, I should have it on my side, that's right.
One of them is by a Japanese scholar, Chiguhusu Kuriyama, about season. He says, in a poem where the seasonal theme fulfills its true evocative function, the season expands the scope of the haiku and creates a background of associations for the specific scene, while the specific scene points out a characteristic yet often forgotten aspect of the season, and thus enriches our understanding of it. So while I don't write all my haiku with seasons in them, I think that it's an important tool in our toolbox, and it's one that we don't want to forget that we have. The second quotation is by the Chilean poet Vicente Huidobro, who wrote, it's about the abstract and the concrete. The abstract should become concrete, and the concrete abstract. Okay, that one sentence is enough for a lifetime of practice. It is. The abstract should become concrete, and the concrete abstract. That is to say, a perfect equilibrium should obtain between the two. Because if the abstract keeps stretching you further towards the abstract, it will come apart in your hands and sift through your fingers. The concrete, made still more concrete, can perhaps serve you some wine or furnish your parlor, but it can never furnish your soul. And the third one is by Viktor Shklovsky, a Russian formalist poet who wrote in Art is Technique. The purpose of art is to impart the sensation of things as they are perceived and not as they are known. That's the purpose of art. The technique of art is to make the object unfamiliar, to make forms difficult, to increase the difficulty and length of perception, because the process of perception is an aesthetic end in itself and must be prolonged. So I think if you think of those three things while you write, it can help move you to the next level. Jim, how about you? His practice is so different from mine. It's so superior.
Do those things. The process, I mean, let's say it this way. You all write haiku, and when you first started writing haiku, you perhaps counted syllables, or you looked up the season word, or you did the stuff that you needed to do to write haiku. And you don't do that anymore, do you? You don't, because that stuff's in you. That stuff has to be in you to write. You can read about that stuff, but then you have to live that stuff, and when it's in you to write, that's when you're writing in those modes. Lee's process is very different than mine. He described to me that he finds an ambient music background for his hour of daily writing, and I'm really the opposite of that. My practice is wake me when you need me. I am not seeking haiku. I love it when haiku seeks me. It sometimes does. When it does, I try to make sure that I have kept writing so that my tools are sharp. And I would have to say that all the concerns that Lee has brought up, you can't write contemporary poetry unless you're somewhat conversant with why people write, what they write, what works, how language is shifting and how you can use the shifts. You need to know that stuff, but those are your tools. And you can't, if you're still reading them about them, they're not in you yet. Read them again. When they're in you, just like you don't count syllables anymore, they'll be in you. All that stuff will be available to you. I'm going to use a really old-fashioned metaphor. I really believe in the muse. I also believe the muse doesn't care about me. So I'm at her disposal. Call me when you need me.
Okay. Well, thing back. Our next subject is group service. Group service. And of course, in addition to his personal mastery, Jim has been very involved in service to the Haiku community, both through Red Moon Press with the individual collections, but especially the anthologies and the New Resonance series, and then again through the Haiku Foundation. And I think Jim strongly believes that moving to the next level will involve you getting involved in service to the community. So can you tell us why you think this is important, Jim?
Yes, I can. The first thing is, how do you grow as poets? So there's some great things to read out there. There are ways to connect yourselves with your muse. You'll find ways to move yourself forward. And maybe that leads to your book, or that leads to more speaking, more readings. So that's your personal growth. That's your next step. Haiku needs its next step too. Haiku needs to grow. How does haiku grow? Well, we're in the company of people that are making it grow. Community makes it grow. So here we are together helping that process. But there are other things too. One of the things we haven't mentioned much, but we will mention again, I'm sure, before our time is up. Somebody organized this thing. Somebody is running this thing. We may not even see all the people behind the scenes. We certainly didn't see all the people who did the work. That's the next step in terms of haiku community. That's giving back to haiku. And that, I think, is a really, really important thing. Haiku, at some point, haiku is going to end for all of us. We're going to stop writing haiku. But we may not stop caring about haiku. I mean, maybe it'll end because we die, but it also might end because the muse no longer visits us. We may still care about haiku, and one of the ways that we care about haiku is the way that it helps all of us be a part of that community. The way it makes all of us come together in a special way with a special kind of understanding. The way that you can make that next step work for haiku is by contributing. You can be part of an HNA committee. You can volunteer some time to the Haiku Foundation. You can anthologize. You can work a regional area. There's some of the best poems that emerge, some of the best poets that emerge come from regional workshops. These things are all available to you because you want to do them, and you want to do them for haiku. That's the next step for haiku. What do you think? How would you do that?
Well, Jim's covered a lot of the stuff that's important. I think one of the most important things, and sometimes the least attractive thing, is writing book reviews. Because writing book reviews takes a lot of time and energy. Sometimes it's difficult to find something that's fair to the author and also fair to the community. And there's some things that are where the gift to the community is evident and one-sided, like Bob Moyer organizing this conference. There's no difficult side to that. Or serving as the president of the HSA, like that lady back there, or regional coordinators. But doing so, the editors of the journals have a difficult job and a time-consuming job. So one of the things that you can do to help them, that I think is very meaningful, is to volunteer to write book reviews. And I was asked to do that recently, and boy, I didn't want to do it because it's hard. Yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to really emphasize here. You can write book reviews, you can judge contests, you can organize local groups. Some people here, Dan Schwerin's got one in Waukesha, and Julie Worther's got one in Ohio, and Michelle Ruth Bernstein's got one in East Lansing, and people have, and it's just a wonderful thing to do because, haiku is about people and getting to know people. And so I would encourage anybody that has an opportunity to organize a group, and anyone that, on the other hand, that has an opportunity to participate in other people's groups and contribute. And then there's the issue of being an ambassador. Bill Higginson was a wonderful ambassador for haiku, and he was kind of my ambassador when I entered the haiku world. And Michael Welch is a wonderful ambassador today with his Haiku Writing Month and so forth. So everyone has different sensibilities and different skills. Some people can do web design and they're really handy because I can't do that. And other people are like Michael or Bill Higginson are open in a way that invites people into our community. Because without new people in the community, you know, I was shocked the first time I went to a haiku meeting, HSA meeting, because I was about 30, and the average age of the people there was about 60. You know, and you know what people who are 60 look like when you're 30. And now it's the other end of the thing. And then mentoring is helping people that, offering to help people that you think you might be able to help. And of course, serving not only serves the community at all, it also serves you, because the higher you climb on the ladder, the better the view, and the more interesting people live on the upper stories usually. So I'll turn it over to Jim now for our third.
If I can just add one thing to that, I want to reiterate what Lee said about book review. All of us in the haiku community are concerned about the way that we are viewed by the rest of the world, if we believe there is a rest of the world. The rest of the world doesn't often take us seriously, at least artistically. One of the reasons for that is that we don't do a very good job promoting ourselves academically, intellectually, critically. Book reviews are not about books. Book reviews are about theory. If you write good book reviews, you're talking about the theory of how haiku works and why this one works and why this one doesn't work. And that's a service to everybody. And it also is a service for the haiku community because it broadens the way other people can read. Because if they're reading these things, you know, without being haiku poets, they already have the language in place for them to connect. When they see these things are in play in good haiku poets, and there's somebody writing intelligently about that, they'll say, I want to know more about that. We can enlarge the group, the haiku group, through good criticism, through good theory, and book review is one of the chief ways that we can do that. It would also be great if we could get book reviews in other than just haiku journals, and that has been done on occasion. So there are ways of expanding that. All these other things are great too, and particularly the person-to-person things. But person-to-person, you reach one person. You write a good review, or you write an expose, you read hundreds, thousands.
Okay, well, our third subject is genre vision, and since Jim was just discussing theory, why don't you start with your ideas of genre vision?
Haiku is not an end to itself. Or said another way, if you think haiku is the end of what you're doing, when it ends, you end. I don't think anybody really believes that, but if that were the case, that would be sort of the logical conclusion. Haiku is part of your life, and haiku is part of the literary life. Haiku is part of the world. There should be something, there is, in my estimation for all of us, there is something larger that haiku is a part of. Haiku does not express who you are. Haiku expresses some part of it. Haiku is a tool that you use to give some idea of who you are as a being in the world. It's only one tool. That's a great tool. It's a tool we all have come to love. But if we only see it as, how can I write my next poem? If that's the limit of your consciousness, you're not going to be a very interesting poet. What makes haiku interesting, what makes poetry interesting, what makes we as beings interesting is how our consciousnesses expand into what's out there. One of the tools we have of accessing that and sharing that is haiku. So from my point of view, haiku vision, the term the term that's been used here, I think what that means is how do we see haiku interacting and enlarging in the sphere of reality, in the sphere of the totality of what we do. And I think it's very important that therefore we think about haiku not as like an end product, but a byproduct. It's one of the things we do, and not the only thing we do, as we try to expand, to know each other, to know the rest of the world, to see things individually, systematically, to make a difference, to make ourselves heard, to make differences where we think differences need to be made, to keep things going where we think they ought to be kept going. These are all things that we do, that we act on, and haiku is only one of the tools there. I think haiku, therefore, we need to see that as in a larger scope. We need to reframe. How do I see haiku make me a better person? How do I see haiku make me understand my fellow poets, my fellow people better? Haiku is a tool. It's one of the ways we get there. So that would be my suggestion for the haiku vision. Don't think of it as, how do I get published the next time? You will, and you all know that. That's not a hard thing in haiku. We'll all get published. How does it make me, how does it enlarge me? How does it enlarge my community? How does it enlarge the genre?
Well, Jim has just proven my point.
I do what I do.
That he's at a higher level than I am. So I'm going to take you back to the human level here and talk about genre vision. You know, you're all members of the club now, so what's next? How is haiku going to meet the poetic challenges of the future? One of the questions I ask is, to what extent is English language haiku going to remain grounded in Japanese aesthetics? You know, we have kyurei, ma, kigo, and kokoro, and you know, how much do we need to know about those in order to write haiku? Is haiku going to focus on language or experience? How are you going to establish a poetics? You know, some people pick a style. For example, Wally Swist has been very, very successful for decades writing a objective, nature-oriented haiku, and he's very good at it. Do you want to do that, or do you want to do something different? Do you just want to pick a stance? For example, the objectivist stance is very interesting, which is resistance, social awareness, and exploratory integrity. What a wonderful phrase, exploratory integrity. Or do you just want to go where the material takes you? What do you want people to say about your haiku? Someone recently said of mine mistakenly, you strive to evolve, expand, and elevate. On the other hand, Bob Spiesh's most famous book review was 3 words, also 3 words, a hapless mistake. So, which camp do you want to be in? Do you want to write like Scott Mason? Do you want to write Wonder Code haiku, which are a wonderful kind of haiku? Or like Scott Metz, do you want to write Code Red haiku? So you have to decide which direction you want to go into. I can still feel, you know, remember the feeling of, what's that, John?
I said, why choose?
Oh, okay, why choose, right. Well, I don't think the community has to choose, but I think the individual poets will choose. Don't take the easy way. My haiku buddies, Michelle Ruth Bernstein, we critique each other's haiku, and she commented on one of my haiku recently. Yeah, that works, but anyone could have written that. Ouch. So don't be satisfied. You know, look at each haiku and try to take it to the next level. You have to look at, you know, there are different ways you can look at it. One of the things I look at is, I look for unity, complexity, and some intensity of feeling, right? If it doesn't have unity, it falls apart. If it doesn't have complexity, it's boring. If it doesn't have an intensive human element, it's a so what haiku. So, you know, as your personal poetics evolve, I think you'll want to think about some of these things anyways. And how do you confirm growth? You confirm it with wins. And how do you take the next step? You take it with play, right? Haiku is playful verse. So let's continue to play with it. And I want to get back to one of those Japanese words, kokoro. It's a wonderful word. It means heart-mind or mind-heart, depending on your point of view. I think the Wonder Code is heart-mind, and the Code Red is mind-heart. I think we as haiku poets are explorers of this heart-mind. You can't say that one is superior to the other, one perspective, but we do have to consider the reader. Why would they want to read our reports from this heart-mind exploration? And in order to write about what's happening, in order to write today, we have to learn what's happening today, and you're not going to learn it from watching the news or listening to the news on TV. One of the things because they're just trying to distract you. So one of the things that I would strongly recommend is that you take a look at this book. This book tells you a lot about what's happening today. It's Yuval Harari's Homo Deus. It talks about the prevailing contemporary religion in the West.
Hold it up, please.
Oh yeah, Homo Deus. It's the the prevailing contemporary religion in the West, which is humanism, and what may be the prevailing religion of the future, which is dataism. And you have to think about how you want to live in relation to those things. So contemporary haiku isn't just writing about Twitter, it's writing about the issues that are going to affect us and our freedom to operate as human beings. And I'd just like to close with one remark, which is that I've learned the hard way, and which is the way I seem to have to learn everything. That every day without writing haiku is a day where something is irretrievably lost. Irretrievably lost. So don't let that happen to you, okay? Thank you.
If I may, before... You're quick, too.
I see my
We have a short amount of time, so we've kind of moved things along. But we'd really like to hear your ideas of what your next step is and where you see haiku going in the next step. There's a program that's coming in right after this, and so we need to vacate. But if you'd like to do that, we have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. So we're just going to move over into the next room, into Sycamore 2. And for anybody who's interested, we'll have a chat if you like. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.